Hi, we are now in chapter 11 of A Separate Peace. It might be the longest chapter in the book. In some ways, it may be the climax of the book. And it starts with Jean saying that Finney will only believe in an Olympian conflict, not in the war. In an Olympian conflict, the war goes to the strongest in the body and the heart. And those of you who've been in sports have probably heard about what heart is. Heart is something spiritual, mental, psychological. It's a type of a strength. So we coaches say if you could bottle it and inject your athletes with it, you could win anything. And there's always the athlete who is referred to as, well, he didn't have much talent, but he did it all on heart. Finney has a huge heart and a lot of heart. They're playing a game, they're having a snowball fight, and Jean is wondering about the northern tip of the woods. The northern tip of the woods, there's this place called the Fields Beyond at Devon. There's this quad, there's that quad, and then there's the Fields Beyond, the place that's way out there. And he's wondering about this field, and he's wondering about the northern tip of the woods, far away from everything, far away from the evil or the war or the conflict. He's wondering if things aren't simpler and better there. Jean is looking for an escape. It's like the cabin on the lake you go to in the summer, but he's looking for an escape from this world that he's in. There is no escape, unfortunately. And things aren't simpler there. He's just assuming maybe they are. He watches Finney walk. He's been watching him walk for some time. And he sees an interruption in his continuous flow. Finney's walk is better. He's not so crippled as he was before. And it's almost, he says, as if at each step Finney forgets where he's going. But Jean comes out of the snowball fight, he feels happy, he feels vital. And also it's late winter, early spring, and we're in that season right now. Everybody's looking for spring. We watch for robins, we watch for green grass. And Jean says, this is the first, this vitality, this energy, this warmth in this snowball fight is the first sign of spring. But then, as usual, in his dark mind, he wonders if khaki or whatever uniform they wear next year, when they're in the armed services, will have the same promise as spring, and he feels it will not. And he's right, it won't. During the snowball fight, Finney decides to betray everybody, and he heightens the confusion and the disorder. And everybody has fun, and so nobody wins, nobody loses, because everybody's having fun, and winning and losing becomes irrelevant. And then they all turn on Finney. Betrayal, which is part of Jean's idea. And when it's over, Jean cautions Finney, now don't fall on your leg. You fall on your leg, it's going to get re-injured. And Finney's almost in denial about his leg. He says, it's getting better every day. They go to their room, and they decorated their room with pictures. Finney has one set, Jean has another. And Jean looks at his pictures, and he says, mine give me a false identity. They show about a background that's not really part of me. He has pictures of southern plantation houses, and he's not from the South. He's from New England. And so he says, a false identity. But then he says, I don't need this false identity now, because I've acquired a sense of my own real authority, my own real worth. I'm having new experiences. I'm growing up. Okay. Well, notice all this happens when Finney is back at school. Finney is helping to transform Jean. I mean, during the snowball fight, he wants Jean to be on his side even though he has lousy aim. Well, come on, be on my side. What the heck? This is fun. Okay. Then Brinker pays them a visit, as he usually does. It's a very formal visit. He walks into their room, and he talks about casualties of war. He says, well, lepers one, but there's another one. And Jean says, well, who's that? And then he says, well, it's Finney. And Finney blows him off. He says, oh, yeah, I'm a casualty of war. Okay, big deal. But the word on leper is he's gone crazy. And so and remember that leper is a physical living presence of the effects of war. he's got PTSD, and there's no looking away from it. And even Finney saw him hiding in the bushes. And so Finney stops all his inventions. He stops all his fantasies. There's no place for fantasy in this real world that they're in. Again, we're charting the progress of the war onto the campus of Devon, and it's coming along, and there's no getting around it. And the recruiters are showing up from one or other branch of the armed services, and they're listening to a presentation, and Brinker's sitting behind Gene. He leans forward, and he says, "You know, you pity Finney." And Gene denies it. "I don't pity Finney." Well, according to Brinker, you got a personal stake in this situation, and it wouldn't hurt you if everything about Finney's accident were forgotten. Now, there it is. For the one, I don't know how many times in the novel, everybody seems to start toward accusing Gene outright of jouncing the limb, and then they just veer off and don't say it. Well, they don't say it because maybe that's not what happened. Remember Gene's wording. Maybe you want to forget about the accident because your best friend got hurt. Gene is doing Caesar translations for Finney. Finney has to pass Latin to graduate. Caesar is a great military commander. Caesar's Gallic Wars is the book. Sam Houston read it in the Mexican-American War. And Finney doesn't like Caesar. Finney doesn't like Caesar because he views Caesar as a tyrant and a dictator. And Finney does not like dictators at all. But he has to believe in Gene. And he has to believe in Gene because he knows Gene better than he knows anyone else. And it's too bad Gene doesn't turn to Finney and say, "Well, what do you know about me? I want to learn." But Finney now does believe in the war. When he heard Leper was crazy, when he saw Leper hiding over in the bushes, he knew it. And he's got to believe in the war now. It's being forced. He's being forced to. Gene says Finney's got a different war, and I really like it. In Finney's war, it's romanticized. Nobody dies. Nothing bad happens. It's sort of a play acting war. And everybody's heroic, and it's all good. But that's not the war that's going on out there in the North Atlantic and in the South Pacific. Suddenly, some boys come into their room and hustle them away, carry them basically, kidnap them into this room, the large common room, where there are plays and concerts and presentations. And Gene has been in this room 9 million times. He's being bored, staring out the window while he's being talked at. And he says, this is not a prank. Any prank would fall flat in this place. And it's a trial, supposedly. There are a group of students on a platform, all dressed in black robes, Brinker's at the head of them. And Gene and Finney it's hard to tell who's on trial, and we're going to have testimony. And so the proceedings begin, and Brinker says, "We're here to get rid of mysteries and rumors and stray rumors." And Gene looks at Finney and can see that Finney's turning something over in his mind. That obstinate, competitive look has left his face, and maybe Gene says he's considering that he just didn't fall out of that tree. No, Gene's a mind reader. He's reading Finney's mind. I don't really think he knows what Finney's thinking at all, but we'll find out in a little while. And the witness, surprise, is Leper LePellier. And so I want to read his testimony because it shows something. And Brinker is asking the questions. "What did you see? Could you see anything with the sun in your eyes?" "Oh, sure," Leper says. "I just shaded my eyes a little like this. And then I could see both of them clearly enough because the sun was blazing all around them, and the rays of the sun were shooting past them like golden machine gun fire." There's a war image for you. "That's what it was like, if you want to know. The two of them looked black as death." All right. "Standing up there." "Up where? Where were the two of them standing?" "On the limb." Leper's getting annoyed. "Who was on the limb? Was one of them ahead of the other?" "Yes, of course." "Who was ahead?" "I couldn't see that. There were just two shapes, and with that fire shooting past them, they looked black as..." "You've already said that. You couldn't see who was ahead?" "No, naturally I couldn't. But you could see how they were standing." "Where were they exactly?" "One of them was next to the trunk, holding the trunk of the tree. I'll never forget that because the tree was a huge black shape too. The other one was a little farther out on the limb. Then what happened? Then they both moved, Leper says. How did they move? They moved like an engine. Like an engine, Brinker's expression was a struggle between surprise and disgust. But it has two pistons. Well, anyway, in this engine, one piston sinks, and then the next one sinks. The one holding onto the trunk sank for a second, up and down like a piston, and the other one sank and fell. Someone says on the platform, the one who moved first shook the other one's balance? I suppose so, Leper said, seemed to be rapidly losing interest. Who was the one who fell? Was the one who fell Phineas? Leper's face became guileful. I don't intend to implicate myself. I'm no fool, you know. I'm not going to tell you everything and then have it used against me later. That's not conclusive testimony. The leper really didn't see very much. He can't tell who's where on the limb because of the sunlight. The two boys know who was where on the limb. But this business about working like an engine with pistons, this is not conclusive at all. This is vague evidence, and a good attorney would pick it apart. But notice those images: machine gun fire, black as death. Death is in war, death is on the campus. And then Leper gets angry, and he accuses Brinker of never realizing I'm important, and that makes you a fool. What does Finney say to Gene at the end of this? Well, Finney says, I don't care. I don't care. And Gene tries to talk to him. He shook his head sharply. I just don't care. Never mind. Wait a minute. We haven't heard everything yet. We haven't got all the facts. No, you don't have all the facts. You get to the rest of the facts, Brinker. You get all your facts. He's crying. You collect every effing fact there is in the world. Finney's crying because maybe he's thinking Gene did this. But then again, maybe he's just upset. Maybe he's just stressed. Maybe remembering the accident is causing him stress and causing him to cry. We don't know. But this is not conclusive evidence. You couldn't do anything with this in a court of law. So again, that image of we're veering toward the truth, or we think we're veering toward what's it, and then we veer off. So nobody really knows what happened out there. And that's chapter 11. That may be the climax of the book.